Woo Jinchul is a godly break support for the mono wind team that everyone should build, and for his artifacts and accessories, the 8 set effect of Burning Greed is pretty much all you'll ever need, especially for endgame content because you can increase your break effectiveness, your whole team's crit stats, and also you can just gain a ton of total power from using his 8 set effect bonus. But if you ever did want to use Woo Jinchul in Battlefield of Time, for example, then combining Solid Analysis alongside Sylph's Blessing, you'll have a really good build for you to use because you can get a ton of break effectiveness and also a ton of elemental weakness damage for all of your team. But then also all of these sets right here can also be very useful. But then onto all of the main stats for all of these pieces, and for Woo Jinchul's helmet, additional defense or defense percent will be the best things that you can go for because Woo Jinchul is a defense scaler. And then of course the body armor is guaranteed to either be additional defense or defense percent as well. Then for the gloves, the two guaranteed main stats of additional attack or attack percent doesn't really matter too much. So pretty much you're going to want to prioritize your best gloves that have the best substats, not necessarily the best main stat. And then for the boots, you can go for two different options, which are going to be either defense percent or critical hit damage, because critical hit damage can benefit Woo Jinchul's damage a lot more. But then if you do choose to go for defense percent, then you can actually create much bigger shields, so it's up to you which one you want to go for and what you want to get out of your boot main stat. The necklace is very similar to the gloves because you're guaranteed either HP or HP percent, so once again you're going to want to choose whichever piece gives you the better substats. The bracelet, of course, you'll always want to go for wind damage percent. The ring will be either additional defense or defense percent. And then finally, of course, your earrings will give you the guaranteed main stat of additional mana points. But then for all of Woo Jinchul's best substats, pretty much the two most important stats for him are of course going to be defense and defense percent, just because his damage and also shields do scale off of that, so pretty much it's a guaranteed must have. And then of course other offensive stats like your crit stats are going to be very good in just increasing your damage. But then what also can be very good is going to be things like your mana point recovery rate and also mana cost reduction, because Woo Jinchul does use a ton of skills, so he's going to be using a lot of mana, which will make those substats very beneficial. But then of course all of these substats as well can be very good. And then of course Woo Jinchul has many different options for all of his best cores, and for his mind piece it doesn't necessarily matter which one you go for, but the only one he can benefit from is going to be the Nameless Demon's Deception, because when you use your ultimate skill you can increase your critical hit damage of your basic skills by up to 20%. For the body piece, I prefer to go for the Ancient Wraith's right hand for that up to 10% damage reduction when the user is hit, which can be very good for Woo Jinchul because Woo Jinchul does have a lot of super armor in his kit, so getting the shield equal to 10% of your max HP for 8 seconds from the other piece isn't going to be as useful, so I do tend to opt for the 10% damage reduction. And then finally for his spirit piece, in my opinion the Ancient Wraith's mana power is going to be his best core, because when the user lands their basic attacks 3 times you can instantly restore 3% of your power gauge, which will work pretty well for Woo Jinchul because he does use a lot of basic attacks. And then for the substats for all of these pieces, pretty much anything that can increase your CC as high as possible, so things like damage increase and critical hit damage are going to be very good options. But then of course even things like damage reduction could also be very beneficial. On to Woo Jinchul's advancements, and he has a lot of great ones. And overall I think as a bare minimum you'll want to at least get your Woo Jinchul to A3, but I'll talk about that in a little bit because his A1 is also fantastic, because Mediation of Power, which is his first basic skill, gets an effect change where you can increase its break effect and also damage by 100%, so completely doubling it, and it can also be used up to 3 times as well, which is really good, simply because you can also then decrease the cooldown of Iron Fist, which is your second basic skill, by 3 seconds, so being able to use this 3 times is going to be very good. And then of course his A2, increasing your defense pen by 10%, is not too bad, it's nothing crazy, would have preferred it to just be a defense increase or something else, but either way it's still okay. But then the reason why it's so important to get him at A3 is basically because when you use Dash, Extreme Evasion, or Judgment, with Judgment being his QTE skill, you can decrease the cooldown of Mediation of Power and also Iron Fist by another 2 seconds, which is going to be really good, and you can also activate your core attack, which is really good because it can stun and also do break damage. And then also through using your QTE as well, you can also activate the user's basic passive and also enhance the effect of it, which does increase the damage increase effect of it to 35% and increases its duration to 7 seconds, which will also be fantastic. And then of course the rest of his advancements are also fantastic, of course, because his A4 can increase his wind damage by 16%, and then his A5, when the user uses their basic attack 4 times, you can then activate your tier 3 passive again, and also when you use Mediation of Power you can increase your defense by 5%, stacking up to 12 times, so you can just get way bigger shields because of this. Woo Jinchul's skill level priority is pretty self-explanatory, because his first basic skill, Mediation of Power, is by far his best skill in his entire entire kit, because the damage of it can go up to 549% of his defense, which can then also be doubled thanks to his A1, and also with it being able to be used 3 times as well, it means you can get a lot of damage and also break damage out of this skill, which then means Iron Fist will be the second best basic skill for you to level up, because thanks to all of the cooldown reductions you can get with this skill, you can use it a ton of times, which means you can get a decent amount of damage from it. So increasing this skill's damage to 1860% of your Woo Jinchul's defense is going to be really, really good for you to level up, which leaves his core attack being in the very same boat, because pretty much you can spam his core attack a ton literally every time you dash and use your basic attacks 4 times, which means you use this an absolute ton. So increasing this skill's damage by up to 534% of his defense will also be extremely valuable. And the same also goes for his basic attacks as well, because again, you use these a bunch. And then of course his ultimate skill damage going up to 4542% of his defense is going to be fantastic. Woo Jinchul's exclusive weapon, Another Level, has received so many buffs over the months of this game being out, and this weapon is really, really good now, because pretty much the main part of this weapon is the fact that when the enemy enters the break state, all of your team members' wind damage can increase by 4%, which can go up all the way to 12% once it is at A5, and this is a completely permanent buff, so once you've instantly broken your enemy, you get a permanent 12% damage increase across your entire mono wind team. Which then finally brings me on to all of Woo Jinchul's best team, his synergies, and also overall just how to use him. And of course, the 2 best characters that synergize perfectly with Woo Jinchul are of course going to be Amamiya Mirei and also Hansemi. And this is obviously just because these are the 2 other best wind characters in the game, so they can help benefit from Woo Jinchul's weapon buff. But also for the likes of Amamiya Mirei, her damage is just ridiculous thanks to her possessed buff that she does apply to herself through her ultimate, which can make her do insane damage, but also then help reset her basic skill cooldowns to do even more damage. And then of course Hansemi will be amazing because her breath buff that she does apply can increase all of your wind team members' basic skill damage by up to 30%, which is amazing for Woo Jinchul and also Mirei because they both do use a ton of basic skills. And also the sheer amount of healing that your Hansemi can do thanks to her lifeline buff through her ultimate is also just unreal. It's just so good. And also her ability to provide shields and also mana points to your entire team is something that you can definitely not miss out on. And then for all of Woo Jinchul's best shadows in his team, of course the best authority leader will easily be Big Rock, because Big Rock's entire team members' basic skill damage increase by up to 11% is going to be a massive damage bonus for your entire team. And then when you pair up Big Rock with Serbi, as well as also Iron, you can get a bunch of valuable debuffs, because you have things like Serbi's combustion debuff, which is amazing, and also Iron's defense decreasing is something that is really valuable. And then when it comes to actually how to use Woo Jinchul, pretty much just make sure in your team that he acts second, with your DPS being first and then your support being third, so that you can instantly bring him in after your DPS being Mirei, so that you can get all of his QTE skills, break damage, and also the buffs that it does apply to him. And then of course when you are using him, just make sure that you are dashing as much as possible, obviously without using too many because you don't want to waste all of them. But fortunately Woo Jinchul does have really nice ways of restoring your dash charges, so you can afford to dash with him as much as pretty much you possibly can, so you can keep activating your core attacks and reducing all of your skilled cooldowns. And overall, if you did enjoy this video or you just found it useful in general, then don't forget to like and subscribe and click the link down below to support me as a creator. And of course, as always, I will see you all in the next video. Peace!